Tension hung in the air like a heavy blanket. Catelyn Stark, her face marked by hesitation, looked at Robb, the King of the North, and made a bold but necessary proposal. The only way to guarantee the crossing and secure the support of the Freys, Robb, is to marry one of their daughters. Arya and Bran must also marry one of Lord Walder's sons. Your wedding must be immediate. That way, you will be called King of the North, even in these dark lands. Nothing else can be done. At least one of them is pretty. The room fell silent as Catelyn's words echoed, and all eyes were on Robb. The young King of the North knew there was no other choice. His family's honor and loyalty were at stake. He looked at his mother, feeling the weight of his responsibilities, but also trembling at the thought of losing the love he had just found, and then nodded. "I will do what is necessary, Mother." It was a difficult promise, but one he had to keep. In the heart of the banquet, amid the drums and wine flowing like a stream, Robb walked to the makeshift altar and married Roslin Frey. The union was a facade, a symbol of subordination and alliance, but the eyes of those present shone with new power. Walder Frey watched the scene with a sly smile. He was satisfied, more than anyone could imagine. He thought it would be at least one less meddlesome son to bother him. Betrayal, which had once been an option, now became a choice, and he made a different one. He announced what had been decided in secret. "The Lannisters asked me to betray you, Robb Stark. They asked me to kill the wolves once and for all." Frey's words fell like a sharp blade, but the impact was less than expected. Robb, without losing his composure, knew that betrayal was coming, but he had a plan in mind. Robb looked at Catelyn and then at Roslin, feeling the weight of the situation. "I will do my duty to this woman, and when the child is born, it will be treated with the respect it deserves. The Stark and Frey bloodlines will continue through this bond." He looked at those present, expecting to see some sign of disapproval, but what he saw was silent acceptance. However, a new revelation caused tempers to flare. I have impregnated another woman, a bastard, and she too will have your child, who will bear the name of River Stark as a reminder of our strength." The words were spoken in a firm tone, but it was impossible to ignore the complexity of the situation Robb now found himself in. It was at that moment that an unexpected sound interrupted the course of the event. The hall door burst open, and a shadowy figure entered, carrying something in his arms. Sandor Clegane, the Hound, completely dirty and distraught. But what caught everyone's attention was what he was carrying. A dirty, hooded child, who soon revealed herself to be Arya Stark. Catelyn, her eyes wide with surprise, was the first to step forward. "Arya, my daughter." The emotion was palpable in her voice, and the reunion of the Stark sisters and brothers seemed like a miracle to those present. Arya, with her characteristic determination, looked at Robb and her mother and said with a weary smile, "I'm glad the journey is over." Robb approached Sandor, grateful for bringing his sister back, and turned to the Hound while Cat embraced her daughter in tears. "You have done more for us than anyone could have imagined. I thank you, Sandor, and I tell you that you will have a place at our table at this celebration as a guest of honor." But instead of words of thanks, Sandor grumbled, with an expression of contempt. "I'd rather roll in shit all day than spend another minute here with these noble idiots. It's not for you that I did this." The hall grew tense at the harshness of his words, but Arya, as always, was not intimidated. She kicked Sandor's foot, and Robb quickly intervened, saying, "Come on, Arya, leave him alone." Deep down, Sandor had no affection for Robb or the Starks, but the money he had demanded from Lord Frey was what kept him on their side. Sandor Clegane, however, was not bothered by gratitude or loyalty. His gaze fixed on Catelyn, and he, with his cruel smile, commented, "I see your daughter Sansa has the same look as you. I think perhaps I should try something with her." The mention of Sansa made Catelyn flush with anger, but the tension was broken by Robb's glare. The Hound smiled, but he knew that the real battle was not there. Clegane drank and ate like a pig that night, and left early in the morning with a bag full of gold. Early in the morning, he looked at the camp that was about to move and noticed that little Arya was watching him from afar. Neither of them said a word, But even for them, that farewell was a little difficult. The dawn in the north brought with it a sense of renewal, but also of vulnerability. Robb Stark, now married to Roslin Frey, felt the heavy responsibility of maintaining the alliance that would ensure the survival of his house and the strengthening of his armies. With Arya finally back, he had won the unconditional support of the North. The conquest of Moat Cailin, a strategic point on the road south, had been only the first step. Robb knew that the real battle would be to maintain unity, something that, despite the victories, remained as fragile as crystal. The siege of Winterfell, which had for so long symbolized the loss of an era, was now a distant memory. The Stark house was back on its land, but rebuilding its legacy would be hard work. Catelyn, alongside Arya, led the efforts to restore the city and maintain order. Arya, for her part, was not content to be just a symbol of return. The young Stark, now more mature and stronger, had begun to train Robb. Catelyn watched with pride as her beloved daughter became a ruthless woman, capable of facing any challenge, whether in battle or political intrigue. The reconstruction of Winterfell was not only physical. The morale and cohesion of the North were being tested, and although House Stark was back in power, the winds of instability blew around every corner. Robb's marriage to Roslin Frey had given the Frey family a position of power, but it had also brought tensions. The Manderleys, former allies of the Starks, did not look kindly on the alliance with the Freys. Rumors of a growing feud between the houses were spreading like wildfire, and everyone feared that the fragile unity of the North would collapse at any moment. At a meeting in the main hall of Winterfell, Robb was surrounded by his advisors and leaders of allied houses. The tension was palpable when Walder Frey, with his sly smile and an air of entitlement, demanded more influence over the future of the North. "You must understand, Robb," he began in his hoarse, impersonal voice, "that my house has made a great sacrifice for you. The marriage was a great deal, but I need more. You must name one of my sons as guardian of the White Bridge, the most strategic point on the Trident. The North needs the stability that only I can guarantee." The entire room fell silent as Robb's eyes scanned the guests, gauging each reaction. It was clear that Frey's demand was not just a request, but pressure disguised as negotiation. "What you propose is a big thing, Walder," Robb replied with his characteristic calm. "But the Guardian of the White Bridge is a position of great importance. I need to ensure that this appointment does not weaken our defenses. House Manderley will not easily accept this change." Frey smiled, realizing he had hit the mark. "I know, my young king. But House Frey has much to offer, and not just in terms of military strength. I control the entire crossing of the Trident. Without my loyalty, the North may lose much more than it has already lost." Walder Frey was playing his cards skillfully, and Robb felt the weight of every word. The alliance with the Freys was vital, but giving in too much could be the end of the trust of other houses. As the debate raged on, Arya continued to train with the needle so she would never be in trouble again. She knew that the power games between the houses did not interest her, but the future of her brother and her house depended on the decisions being made in that hall. But unlike Robb, she would have no patience for the games of the nobles. She knew that the North was hanging in the balance, and every move could change the course of history. The loyalty of each house, though sealed with blood oaths, was a very thin thread, ready to snap at the slightest wrong move. As the debate over the future of the White Bridge continued, Robb felt the weight of responsibility crushing him. The North was united, but fragile. The alliance with the Freys was essential for survival, but at the same time, Walder Frey's murmurs of distrust and gestures showed that in politics, nothing was guaranteed. Robb then stood up. His voice was firm, his eyes hardened like the ice of the lands he ruled. "Lord Walder Frey," he began, "my alliance with your house was sealed with honor and blood. But know that I am not a boy guided by whims or veiled threats. You offered me your daughter. I accepted her as my wife and Queen of the North. But what you want now is not an alliance, it is control." The entire hall fell silent. The tension seemed to explode in the heavy air. "The crossing of the Trident may be yours, but the Ice and Wolf throne belongs to the Starks, and I will not rule under blackmail." The advisors looked at each other, fearing Frey's reaction, but Robb did not back down. You will have the respect your house deserves. Your children will be protected and your name remembered for joining us. But don't you dare ask for what does not belong to you." Frey, taken aback by the young king's harshness, remained silent. The old lord, accustomed to manipulating and bending others to his will, found himself for the first time facing a Stark who spoke like a true king. Robb then concluded, "Either you are my ally, or you stand alone against the coming war." Robb's position was consolidated. With the Freys warned and restrained, he returned his focus to his campaign against the Lannisters. The conquest of Moat Cailin allowed his forces to advance quickly through the Riverlands. He knew how to use the structure of the Trident, not as a dependency of Walder Frey, but as a tactical advantage. The army of the North and the men of the river marched with purpose and fury, driven by justice long denied to the Stark name. Ned Stark's death would not be forgotten, it would be avenged. In the battles that followed, Robb demonstrated admirable military genius. He divided his forces, confusing the Lannister spies. One part attacked Harrenhal directly, while another surrounded the Red Keep's supply routes. Lord Tywin, caught between defending King's Landing and recovering the lands of the West, began to lose his advantage. Internal betrayals, fueled by the manipulations of Peter Baelish and Varys, aggravated the Lannisters' situation. Robb, taking advantage of this, finally moved his forces south toward the capital. During the march, something remarkable happened. Houses that had previously been afraid to choose sides, such as the Tarly and Florent houses, began to support the Starks. Many did so, not out of loyalty, but because they realized that the young wolf was winning. The Lannisters' morale plummeted, and the starving and desperate population of King's Landing whispered Robb's name as their liberator. With the arrival of the Northern Army at the city gates, Joffrey's reign began to crumble. Cersei tried to maintain order, but even her own guards began to desert. When the gates opened, it was not through direct battle, but through internal surrender. The people, tired of tyranny and hunger, made way for the Starks. Robb entered not as a thirsty conqueror, but as a just king. His first order was to secure food for the people and arrest those responsible for the abuses committed in the name of the crown. Tyrion was spared, and even though she had been used as a bargaining chip for months, Sansa was rescued and Cersei imprisoned. Joffrey, in a final act of madness, tried to assassinate Robb and ended up killed by Arya, in front of everyone, with a clean and silent blow from Needle. The North had taken its revenge,